It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app.
2100 hours, and indeed we're live on the OpenView chat app. We are also available on SABC Plus. Catch us live on DSTV 802 as we bring you the very latest news in and around your world. Whether you're listening from the heart of Africa or from other corners of the globe, we welcome you and we'd like to hear your perspective. This is Africa World Hour, Channel Africa, the African perspective. Do share with us your thoughts on some of the stories that we're covering today, the latest developments in news, current affairs, and all other things of interest. Let's take a look at your headlines now.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And we start with this story. South Africa's Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, has downplayed the absence of representation from the US at the G20 conference to be held in Johannesburg on the 22nd and the 23rd of November. Briefing the press in Pretoria today on the outcome of yesterday's cabinet meeting, Ntshavheni said that the US's absence from international conferences is not unique to South Africa, citing the country's lack of participation in the G7 earlier this year. She says that the work of the conference will continue despite the absence of the US, which is the incoming chair of the G20.
South Africa will remain part of the troika of the outgoing chair, the chair and the incoming chair. Will work with the United Kingdom to make sure that the programs that South Africa and the legacy of the South Africa projects continues when the UK takes over from there, if the US does not take over of those. In any case, the US has already communicated what they will do. What they only have two focus areas, if I recall, and it diminishes everybody's focus areas. But the United Kingdom holds a view that our focus areas, they will proceed with them. They're actively participating also, and next year they also form part of the trade. So it's neither here nor there for us.
The Kenyan government says about 200 citizens may have joined Russian forces fighting in Ukraine. The Foreign Affairs Ministry says some of those recruited are former members of the Kenyan military. The BBC's Richard Kagwe has more.
Kenya's foreign ministry says families have contacted its offices claiming their relatives may have been caught up in the war in Ukraine. It says fake agents have been luring recruits with promises of thousands of dollars without revealing the nature of the work. Many end up deployed to the front lines fighting for Russia. Police say some returnees have come back injured or deeply traumatized. In September, 21 Kenyans are rescued from an apartment complex in Nairobi where they are waiting to be processed. Ukraine's foreign ministry says more than 1,000 Africans from 36 countries are serving alongside Russian forces.
And in other news, researchers have warned that global carbon emissions from coal, oil and gas are set to reach a record high this year. They presented results of their study at this year's COP30 Climate Summit in Brazil. The BBC's Matt McGrath has the details.
The global carbon budget gives a complicated picture of a world that is going through a massive change in how it generates energy. More coal, oil and gas have been burned this year, so emissions from fossil fuels are up just over 1%. But the rate of growth of carbon output has slowed remarkably over the past decade. And in some areas, such as deforestation, the emissions from cutting down trees have fallen. However, new green energy is not yet slowing the rise in global temperatures.
The tribunal trying Bangladesh's fugitive former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for crimes against humanity says it will deliver its hugely anticipated verdict on Monday. She is accused of being the main architect behind hundreds of killings during last year's mass uprising against her autocratic rule. The BBC's Ambarasan Etrarajan has the details.
The hugely anticipated verdict by the Bangladeshi tribunal will mark a significant moment for the country as well as for the relatives of those killed and disappeared during the anti-government protests that ousted Sheikh Hasina last year. She has refused to return from India to attend the trial, calling it a farce. The UN says up to 1,400 people may have been killed in the violence during her failed bid to hold on to power. Her outlawed Awami League has called for a a lockdown in the capital, Dhaka. Security has been tightened in and around the tribunal.
And finally, British scientists say they have discovered why type 1 diabetes tends to be more severe and aggressive in young children. More from the BBC's James Gallagher.
Children seem to develop more aggressive type 1 diabetes than those diagnosed later in life. Researchers at the University of Exeter studied pancreas samples from 250 donors, allowing them to see how the beta cells, which produce the hormone insulin, formed normally and in type 1. They showed early in life the beta cells live in small clusters, which are easy for the immune system to pick off and destroy. The researchers say it's a really significant finding and that the future was looking much brighter with drugs that can slow the immune system's attack.
Channel Africa.
Your Africa, your voice, your channel. Channel Africa.
The African perspective.
A prominent Zimbabwean politician and leader of the National Democratic Working Group, Job Sikhala, has been released on about $600 bail by a South African court nearly a week ago after his arrest on allegations of transporting explosives. Police say 26 blasting cartridges and 15 capped fuse connectors were found in his vehicle. Supporters welcomed Sikhala outside the courthouse, turning his release into a show of solidarity amid ongoing legal proceedings. He joins us now to talk about his arrest and what happens next. A very good evening to you, Mr. Sikhala, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's just first start with, can you just walk us through, what happened, the events that led up to your arrest, and how did that occur?
No, it just happened that we have been invited at Rose Lane Shopping Center in Pretoria West by one of the Zimbabweans whom I happened to know, who is called Nigel Swanda or Shumba. To come and have a chat at that place. When we arrived there, we were later joined by one of the persons whom he introduced to us as Tinashe Mpofu, whom he called his young brother. So after having had tea and also having some few conversations between among ourselves, Nigel then asked for the power bank for his phone. He said that he has forgotten his phone, his power bank for his phone at home. My uncle told him that he should ask the waiters for them to charge his phone so that when it has picked up some battery, he will be able to use it. He then said that no, he has some very important messages that he wants to receive from his phone, so he needs the power bank to be with him. He asked me whether I have a power bank or not. Then I said no, I've left it in the car, and I can go and take it and then bring it to you. So when we had to go to the car, they did not belong to myself. It belonged to my uncle, Mr. Alexander Tema. He wanted to give me the keys to go and take the power bank from the car, but it later did not happen that way because the friend to Nigel Shumba, this other guy called whom we were told that he is Tinashe Mpofu, asked Malume to give him the keys because he would not allow people of my stature, as a prominent politician in Zimbabwe and also a leader, for me to go to the motor vehicle as it was raining. That he must, because of his respect for the age of my uncle and also myself as a political leader in Zimbabwe, will not allow us to go to the motor vehicle while it was raining. So it was better that we give the keys to him to go and collect the power bank.
Okay, so
I then told him,
I'm sorry to rush you along, but I do want us to get to some sort of conclusion. So, after how long, after this exchange happened, did the police approach you? Did it happen at that time? And did you have any suspicions, any anxiety about how the situation unfolded? As in, you don't know this guy. Do you have cause to trust him with your uncle's possessions?
No, we had no any suspicions on the basis that we thought that as people who, because we knew Nigel Shumba from the past, we thought that it was a genuine friendship, unbeknown to us that he was on a mission. He is somebody who has been on deployment against myself for a long time. There are so many things that we later gathered through our intelligence gathering that he has been on a mission for a long time, and he has been working on it with the system back home. And it has been also confirmed by some of the people who have been investigating this case.
What is a long time, and what is that mission, to your understanding and from the intelligence that you say you've gathered?
Yeah, it has been quite for some time, because I happened to know him the period when I came to South Africa to launch my book on the 30th of August. We interacted. You then asked us he asked me via the author of my book, Munyarat Savano, to accommodate me at the hotel where Munyarat was supposed to stay. But myself, I didn't know him. I happened to have been introduced to him by Munyarad's and his friend who was called Sam, for me to have happened to know him. So since then, up to present, we have been talking, and we thought maybe we have built up some form of friendship. Unbeknown to me is that he has been somebody deployed to really snitch me and at the end of the day deliver some certain things on me.
So to be certain, when you say somebody deployed by the system back home, are you referring to the government? Are you referring to state security as a law enforcement?
Yeah, definitely by the for planting those explosive in those explosives. As soon as the police officers stopped us along the road from Pretoria to Johannesburg, they immediately just rushed where they were placed to show that this was a pre-planned thing, and they immediately declared that the explosives were made from Zimbabwe.
Okay,
so
I'm going to need you to repeat. I'm going to need you, Mr. Scala, to firstly just stay in the spot that you are at, because you got to cut off completely when answering the question, to clarify who do you believe is behind the planting of these explosives against you, if that is the case. And if you could also just go back to your justification of saying it's because there was a quick arrival of the police. I want to understand, at which point were you caught with these explosives, these 26 blasting cartridges and 15 connector caps?
It was when we have been after we have left Pretoria on our way now to Johannesburg, going back to our house in Midrand. That's where the police arrived, and as quickly as they arrived, they sirened and then blew lighted us and asked us to stop. The moment we stopped, they quickly rushed to the passenger seat of the motor vehicle and said that we have been tipped by somebody that there are dangerous weapons in this motor vehicle. May you please stop? And then we stopped. We came out. We laughed because I knew that my uncle always, every morning, he washes his car, he looks after it, and he picks his school children around the midday and so forth. And there was absolutely nothing like that in his motor vehicle. So when we just came out of the motor vehicle after they produced the guns and also asked us to raise up our hands, we came out of the motor vehicle. They quickly rushed to the passenger seat and then said, and then took out the paper bags that were under the passenger seat and said, "What is this? What is this? These are explosives. These are explosives." And they said, "These explosives are made from Zimbabwe. They are made from Zimbabwe. These are the explosives that are made in Zimbabwe." So what would have surprised, and something that must surprise all of us, is that myself, when I came to South Africa, I came via Botswana. I was invited to address the Botswana Patriotic Front Congress in Serowe. Before I came to South Africa, I flew to Botswana. I flew from Botswana to South Africa via Oliver Tambo International Airport. So, for you to try and play the kind of cheap debt niche which they performed, honestly speaking, it demonstrated that it was not a well-planned job for them to execute against.
And when you say they, because as I mentioned, you got cut when you were saying who is behind that. So who is, to your mind, behind your persecution, and what would it achieve? Is it you as
No, the people who are responsible for my persecution is clearly the regime in Harare through their intelligence operatives. So the intelligence system of Zimbabwe is the one that was on operation to make sure that the first thing that you have to know is that these guys, what I later gathered is that these explosives could have exploded at any time from under my seat, and I could have just been blown into pieces together with my angle. So the first thing is that they wanted to assassinate me. That was purely an assassination which they wanted to carry out against me. Then secondly, a failure of which it happened that it didn't happen was for them to have tipped the police officers of South Africa for them to find us with explosions, knowing very well that the issue of criminality in South Africa being carried out by several criminals, blowing banks and also ATMs in South Africa is a huge issue. So they thought that I was going to be arrested and got into prison, and then during the period of my incarceration in prison, they will be able to do what they want, and not having any opposition in as far as fighting against Mnangagwa's intention to extend this term of office to 2030 is concerned. They don't want anyone to oppose it, and anybody who is seen to be organizing around the issues of resisting the prolongation of Emmerson Mnangagwa's term of office is in trouble in our country. This is a reality. The struggle of the people of Zimbabwe is real, and these are some of the trials and tribulations that we come across, and there is no doubt. And for everyone must know that this has been carried out by
Mr. Scala. We are running out of time, and I need to ask you this. In brief, what is your next move?
My next move is for us to make sure that this matter is cleared by the courts of law. We are anxiously waiting for the day of the trial. We have been admitted to bail. We will follow the needs for us to present ourselves to the processes of the courts of law, and after the completion of the trial, then we will see the verdict after that. But we will continue and intensify our campaign against the entrenchment of dictatorship in Zimbabwe. Right. We will not stop. No one will be able to solve our own problems. It is incumbent upon us as citizens of Zimbabwe for us to solve the political challenges that we are facing. So we'll proceed
there, Mr. Scala.
Fighting against 2030.
Mr. Scala, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, we do appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Job Scala, leader of the National Democratic Working Group in Zimbabwe, speaking to us about his recent arrest here.
Thank you very much.
He's being released from court, and what he says are trumped-up charges, which he says would have ultimately have led to the objective of assassinating him, given the explosives that were found in his vehicle. That brings the time to just about 20 minutes past 9.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. One hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we continue with Africa World Hour. A leading South African investigative organisation, Open Secrets, has been hit with a court-imposed gag order, raising alarm bells over press freedom and the accountability of powerful institutions. The organisation has confirmed that it is currently unable to speak on a matter of significant public importance due to a court-imposed restriction. A gag order is a court ruling that prevents people or the media from publicly sharing certain information, usually to protect a legal process or someone's privacy. We are joined now by Moira Campbell, Joint Interim Leader at Corruption Watch, for some reaction to this. A very good evening to you, Moira. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So, your thoughts on these developments?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Tsepiso. I think it's kind of raised alarm bells within the civil society kind of network when we heard about this court order basically interdicting Open Secrets from sharing any detail. I mean, even the judge that ordered the court order, the dates, the court in which it was to take place. And so we felt that this was quite an alarming sort of curtailment of the public's right to know, and also in terms of being able to pursue our work in public interest investigations. And we felt it goes against the principles of the Constitution, which are about open justice and also upholding the public's right to know about cases that we are involved in particular exposing corruption and malfeasance.
And obviously, without asking you to overstep or, get yourself in trouble with that gag order, are you able to give us context of how you came to this point?
I think we probably all saw the notices and the posts from Open Secrets themselves. We got to hear of it through our network. And I think just the very nature of such a court order, which we termed, and correctly so, gagging, we felt was a disturbing trend. This is not the first time that we've seen court orders against journalists, against civil society organizations. And I think we felt it was important as a collective. So there were 23 organizations altogether who felt that we needed to stand in solidarity with a very a front runner in terms of civil society activity in countering corruption and calling for accountability. Open Secrets has done some really groundbreaking work in exposing, financial crime, corruption, and certainly also during the state capture era. So, we felt it was important to write to the Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, to express our opinion, and then also to ask for some measures to curtail this kind of tendency for a gag order. I should also say that we did see a statement from the Office of the Chief Justice today, and in which the court order has now been released. So in our view, that's a result of the advocacy that we engaged in yesterday.
And obviously you can't say who, what, or why, but just a background on into who you are. You are a non-profit organization that exposes and builds accountability for private sector economic crimes through investigative research, advocacy, and law. So far, how have you been able to circumvent the point at which you're at, or is it because of just the sheer nature of what you have been investigating, as in just how powerful you should I say protagonist is in this case?
Well, I should just state that, I'm with Corruption Watch. So
Yes.
we are a kind of a partner organization of Open Secrets. So, I think they have been involved in an investigation, which obviously I'm not able to speak about. I think they would be best placed to speak about it now that there has been a response from the Office of the Chief Justice, which is a very good step, we feel. Perhaps, they would be in a better place to be able to talk about that. But we know from our own investigations and in dealing with cases around corruption, how tricky it can be. And certainly we need to balance, issues of transparency, the public's right to know, with protecting, people's information and sort of preserving the integrity of people's information as well. So it's not it is a fairly tricky space, but I think just the very nature of this kind of a court order was unusual. For us, it was really disproportionate to what seemed to be a case where, that is ongoing, and to not be able to share anything, even the details of, as I say, the date, the judge, the court in which which issued the order, just seemed to be really a step too far.
I mean, and as you rightly say, you're a partner organization, but the reason I was asking you this, and surely in investigative journalism, there is a level of secrecy that must exist so that practitioners are able to get through whatever work that they're doing. But do you see it as part of a growing trend of lawfare, using the courts to silence critics?
Well, I think our concern was based on that feeling that we've seen quite a few gagging orders. I mean, I don't have all the specifics to hand, but I know that we have in the past also come out in support of organizations who've been gagged or have been, I think, who have not been able to share information, which is one of the kind of cornerstones of journalism. But I think, I think you ask a good question, because one does need to look at issues of privacy. So, certainly we're not suggesting that we should be overstepping people's right to privacy, and that goes for, both people who are implicated or those who are blowing the whistle. I think we need to preserve the right to privacy but when a case is in the public interest and information is in the public domain, there really is no reason to have a court order of this nature. So, I'm not a lawyer. I should also clarify that. But I think certainly when we're looking at our own investigation, we have to, I think, of paramount importance when looking at investigations is the protection of the whistleblower. So, we consider that probably the biggest priority.
I guess one is also just trying to gauge how this will impact the anti-corruption movement as a whole, the broader ecosystem of accountability.
Yeah, I think, there's kind of good and bad news out of this story, because I think the good thing is that collectively we came together, and most of the organizations, I think you will see them on the press statement. I mean, we all in some way or other are engaged in sort of similar work, and we also work collectively on various issues. For instance, during the state capture process, quite a few of us made submissions. So I think there is a positive step in that as civil society collectively, we do have some power to advocate for changes to be made. So, we raised concern that this was a gagging. I know the statement of the Chief Justice found that unfortunate, the use of the word gagging, but we stand by that. It was, in our view, a gagging. But the good news is also that there was a response, and one day later, which is also, I think, something to be recognized, and we are grateful for that, because in a way it shows that there is a very critical role for civil society in holding powerful, institutions, people, accountable. And I think also to uphold I think the integrity of the judiciary is also very important in terms of public confidence in the judiciary. One of the cornerstones in the Constitution is transparency and the right of the public to know. I mean, it's embedded in the Constitution. So we will always be using that as our guide.
Maura Campbell, thank you so much for your time. She's Joint Interim Leader at Corruption Watch, speaking to us about what has happened to the Open Secrets Investigative Organization. And obviously, as she was saying, we can't really talk about what is behind that, the motive behind that, the reasons behind it, but we certainly will keep a close eye on these developments, because it does speak to the environment in which journalists and those truth sayers who are doing civic work around accountability, corruption, work in. Brings the time to 28 minutes to 10.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
The South African Medical Association, SAMA, has officially suspended all relations with the Israeli Medical Association, a move welcomed by healthcare workers for Palestine, South Africa. The organization says this decision represents a powerful stand for medical ethics, justice, and human rights, echoing the global call for solidarity with Palestinians.
And recently, we've also seen other national associations, such as the British Medical Association, Turkish. They've released quite strongly worded statements, although none have gone as far as SAMA to cut ties with the Israeli Medical Association, as well as to call for the suspension from the World Medical Association. It's a watershed moment that an organization has actually taken this step. And it's not an idle threat. SAMA is a member of the World Medical Association, and they can action this resolution by bringing it before the World Medical Association.
Dr. Sadiq Mullah, chairperson of Healthcare Workers for Palestine, South Africa.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Argentina's President Javier Milei has abruptly withdrawn from the G20 summit in Johannesburg, aligning himself with US President Donald Trump's call for a boycott of the gathering. The move, which has caught diplomats off guard, marks a striking act of political solidarity between the two populist leaders and deepens divisions within the Global Economic Forum. How significant is this for the G20 grouping of countries, and is his absence really going to be felt? This is the questions we are asking to Arina Murisan, who is postdoctoral fellow at UNISA. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Hi, Tsepiso. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start off with the ripple effect and possibility thereof of Argentina's president's announcement, and should it have been expected to begin with?
So it's important to remember that this final summit of the year is very symbolic, yes, and it's a show about solidarity and good faith towards a country hosting, but there's been so much work being going on that throughout the year. So many ministerial meetings across issue areas, so many partnerships being struck up, and so many working groups and engagements groups continuing the work as planned. And so when you have leaders drop out, it happens from time to time. Some choose to do so politically, some choose to do so for other practical reasons. But is it symbolically significant if Argentina will be present or not? They'll still be represented. It does not mean they are completely stepping away, but it does send a very specific message in terms of solidarity with the US.
And what about not just solidarity within the US, but also the global South? This is the moment because it's coagulating around South Africa. And South Africa has made huge concerted efforts to ensure that the issues that will come under the spotlight will be representative not only of the global South conditions and their objectives in terms of owning the conversation on the policy decisions that are made, but will it further galvanize them to actually say, as you say, because there have been myriad conversations that have been occurring throughout the year?
So when we look at the symbolic implications for what South-South cooperation narratives mean, and Argentina is incredibly special when it comes to this because Argentina actually hosted one of the very first South-South cooperation movements, and with the 1978 Buenos Aires Plan of Action. And that was a key milestone formalizing what technical cooperation meant amongst developing countries. And with South Africa choosing to orient its agenda around developing country issues, global South issues, where we talk about solidarity, equality, sustainability, these themes benefit Argentina. And yes, when you see a leader skipping an African-hosted summit, it does tend to undermine this kind of narrative of the global South, where you have this focal point, and it's not supposed to be a kind of North-South, South-South engagement. But this is significant because South Africa is also the last country in the cycle to host from a global South perspective. And next year we go to the USA, and we expect the agenda to change significantly, to orient more towards what the G7 rhetoric has been relying on as well.
And just particularly on what you said, there is the symbolic, but there's also the substantive. There is no doubt that the global world order is facing unprecedented times, and that particularly global South countries are pushing the envelope when it comes to their collective demographic weight, because some of these issues, when we talk about inequality, when we talk about hunger, when we talk about aid cuts, they're the ones that are disproportionately impacted on. So again, I'll go back to the question that, do you think it's something that's going to highlight the urgency of being united and ensuring that these policies are enacted upon before even the United States takes over the G20 presidency? But as Minister Ntshavheni was saying earlier on, that it will still form part of the troika of leadership there.
So what's important to remember about forums like the G20 is that there are a lot of recommendations made. And so it's really dependent on individual countries on how best they're able to domesticate this kind of G20 agenda. It really matters very little whether or not the G20 proclaims something. It's how each country is willing to and able to really take up the mantle and start to implement a number of these reforms. And yes, it is also dependent on what global discussions and global debates are able to galvanize, of course. And to some extent, we are seeing a lot of fragmentation, in how countries are able to engage. And this is part of the challenge, because you see this pattern of powerful actors treating multilateral forums very instrumentally, very transactionally. They attend or they skip based on their domestic politics. And this does tend to contribute to this fragmentation in global solidarity and how we're able to move to common solutions. And you see fewer durable cross-border commitments, of course, and more bilateralism and more competing in mini coalitions and more worryingly hyper-regionalization. And so where you see South Africa, the practical implementation, or the practical implication rather, is their ability to lead multilateral agendas, of course. They're trying to tie everyone together at the same time, as with every other presidency. But of course, we're in a very transactional period of international relations, and this is really pulling the agenda apart.
And to your point, we've seen Israel's Prime Minister make a rare visit to Africa. He specifically visited Zambia and the DRC. And my question then is it a true weaponization of ideology and a pushing of that common held view of dysfunction, particularly when it comes to the global south, to African countries, and will it succeed?
So we're really grappling with this ideology, this retreat from the collective problem solving. And what's interesting to see is up until this point, or not up until this point, because we've seen pressure within multilateralism for a while now. I think what's important to note is that for the longest time, you'd have leaders, for example, or the West, for example, leading on multilateralism or driving multilateralism or multilateral debates because some felt they had enough to benefit from it. And now, because of the period we find ourselves in, less and less we see this approach to how we can possibly take this collective problem solving forward, that it does no longer suggest how we're able to come to the table commonly, and that it is a shift towards more nationalist transactional diplomacy among actors. And it's not a total collapse of problem solving or the collectivity between it, but it's certainly weakening, where you see this multilateral action requiring a stronger political leadership and stronger trust. And we're in a reality where we have a trust deficit. And it is very much an operational consequence. More fragmentation is more bilateral deals, like I've said, and fewer big tent compromises on global public goods.
But I also want to perhaps just delve a little bit deeper and, if not, challenge the notion of complete failure, of complete institutional weakness when we look at countries like South Africa, which obviously is bearing the brunt of this so-called corporate watchdog status it is now dealing with because of its position on Israel and what the US accuses it of. Should we be accepting this ideological view that the US and, in this case, Argentina are pushing?
Not at all. Look, South Africa is a committed multilateralist and finds value in organizations and institutions where it's looking for partners that try to achieve the same kinds of things. And at the same time, or at the end of the day, we're also viewing this kind of questioning of, since it's G20 just around the corner, what is the legitimacy and what is the cohesion about G20 really? And it is a complicated space, and it's important to remain committed in this sense, because the current rhetoric is exposing where is the fragility, and specifically in political consensus. And it's really highlighting the limits of where multilateralism ends. And that's an important point because it speaks to multilateralism not being perfect, institutions not being perfect. And that also is an important moment because they were never perfect to begin with. And so we need to be very pragmatic and say, well, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater at the same time. We need to work on what we can work. And rather than saying multilateral bodies, or rather than viewing this kind of pushback on multilateralism that it no longer serves, it's very important, to say that that it's now time to prioritize what is flexible, what is interest driven, to view what is interest driven coalitions over what is universal, to have this very, very real understanding of who finds themselves where, and to continue to build consensus where progressively possible.
All right. I wish we could continue. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I really do thank you for your time. Arena Mursam, postdoctoral fellow at UNISA, speaking to us about the pulling out of Argentina from attending the G20 summit, echoing the US's sentiments, not only about the legitimacy of South Africa's holding the position, but obviously it's got its own agenda that it's set that is likely to be completely divergent to South Africa's own objectives. So it brings the time to 15 minutes to 10.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. The Upside, taking the African perspective to fresh levels. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to The Upside. All things that torture. That's the name of the album.
You know, torture literally means that someone who bears a torch, like a torture, like not T-U-R, but T-O-R-C-H-E-R. So like it's a Statue of Liberty holding a torch, like keeping it burning, you know what I'm saying? Like it just implies the fact that we have to inspire one another. We have to tell it through the music and reach out to the people to know that, listen, you got light inside of you that has to bend. You know what I'm saying? Like keep it burning. Like don't let nobody dim your shine.
The Upside. Live and real. It's dynamic. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And brings the time now to 14 minutes to 10 here on Africa World Hour. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for continuing to be with us. If you have since 2100 hours, and if you've just tuned in, thank you for tuning in as we wrap up the show. So this time we talk about something of interest. According to an Airbus study, only 1 in 5 airline routes across Africa are direct, meaning most travelers still have to fly through Europe or the Middle East just to reach another African country. This results in higher costs, fewer travelers, and weaker tourism and trade links across the continent. With South Africa hosting the G20 summit, seamless global connectivity is high on the agenda. Experts say Africa has a unique chance to push for modernized air service agreements that make it easier and cheaper to fly within the continent. We speak now to Professor Kaitano Dube, Professor in Tourism and Integrated Communication from the Vaal University of Technology, on why air connectivity is vital for Africa's growth. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Professor Dube, on such an important subject, and one, dare I say, that has exasperated many Africans and who have been asking for many years that why are we not fixing this? Are you able to answer that question?
So good evening, Sister Tsepiso, and good evening also to your viewers. So the issue of air connectivity is a complex one which we cannot solve overnight, but it's something I think that we need to start working towards so that we ensure that there is regional integration, continental integration, within the scope of trying to improve the economic and livelihood security of our people. So air connectivity is not only vital in terms of from a tourism perspective, but it's a critical cog in terms of economic development, particularly when we look at the importance of cargo airlines that play a critical role in trying to move some of the goods that actually either are produced in Africa or in other sections of the world. Air connectivity become a central tool in achieving that. But what we have seen is that given the historical legacy where Africa came late in terms of the global development. We have not seen a significant progress in this particular regards. With COVID-19 reversing, I think, some of the gains that we have seen. We during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen quite a number of airlines, being declared either insolvent or going under, literally, which compounds the problems that we have had in terms of connectivity. If you look at closer home, the South African Airways had to be put under business rescue. We had, I think, Kulula, which was operated by British Airways, which service, most of our tourism routes. And this had significant impact on the travel and mobility and the lift in terms of some of our destinations now are actually realizing as we post COVID-19, as we see recovery taking place. But we also have infrastructure challenges whereby some of the infrastructure that we have in terms of airport is not adequate to kind of service some of the aircraft that we have. So this is a major problem which have got multifaceted challenges.
Okay.
And when I was talking about the legacy, yes.
All right. No, I just wanted us to I get the challenges, and we are going to drill into them. But I just thought let us just also deal with where we are at the moment. So it's not as if African leaders and obviously the academic sphere have not identified these problems and have not risen to the challenge. I'm talking about African leaders here. The AFCFTA has been the subject of much debate, including the regional agreements that are in place. So there is a recognition by the regional blocs as well that there is an impact in the lack of modernized air service agreements. But how long are we talking about in making some sort of headway? We can't just speak ad nauseum about here are the challenges. There has to be a concerted effort, including with the development strategies and financing strategies that are in place.
Yes, indeed. So the question of when is a bit complex because of the underlying factors. So one of the factors that you will find that there are challenges in terms of financing some of the capital assets that are actually required for the aviation industry to be at ease. But in as much as you spoke about some of the policies that are there, these policies, by and large, we know about the open skies for Africa, but some of these policies have not been actioned. In as much as there has been a political speak, what we want to start seeing is political action, an action that actually realizes into meaningful action. And there has been a lag in terms of us realizing that particular initiative. So we are still a bit far in terms of achieving that particular goal. And I wouldn't want to put a specific timeline to say by such a date we would have this issue resolved, because it speaks to political commitment, it speaks to financing, it also speaks to a large extent the issue of skills. We would know, I think, particularly if you look at the South African scenario, whereby we are battling just to have people that have got capacity to operate our in-space navigation systems, operating at 40% in a country that is that have got huge unemployment. So that also speaks to the issues of skills and transforming policy into action.
Okay, so let's talk about doing that. The G20 summit is coming up. How do we learn from continents like Europe, Southeast Asia, that we at least empower ourselves, but also not find ourselves in those evergreen contracts that still leave us out of the space?
Yes. So one of the things that we can do is to try and leverage on the technical capacity that these G20 countries have. If you look at the amount of connectivity that is actually in the for example, the European airspace, the American airspace. These are well-connected airspaces whereby Africa, being led by South Africa, can actually, tap into technical resources and also try to foster policies that deals with some of the challenges that we have seen. Because amongst other factors, we have got issues of exorbitant air taxes, which actually then, in as much as the operating cost for airlines is prohibitively high, which threatens the business viability of many airlines. So some of these, the G20 then has to play a leading role in terms of bringing all the role players that are in the aviation, transport, tourism, and including international relations to the same table so that we find meaningful solutions to some of these challenges.
And how important is connecting air connectivity with other tourism infrastructures like roads, because it's all part of a matrix, isn't it?
Yes. So for tourism to be viable, we need to start to see infrastructure that is working as it is supposed to. And in some of the destinations that we have, particularly in Africa, are in remote areas. And these remote areas require some sort of air servicing. So if we have got reliable, so one of the issues that we then need to talk about is, in as much as we have got that connectivity, is that connectivity reliable? Is it efficient? And if it is not efficient and it is not reliable, then it becomes very difficult, particularly for a tourist that is coming from outside of Africa or even within Africa. So when travelers come to the continent, they already have a very tight, itinerary. So if you're going to have an air system that is not efficient, then you end up losing on some of the bookings that we have made, and that this have got serious implications on the reputations of our destinations and also on whether someone can actually invest in travel to Africa, given the challenge in terms of time and also in terms of resources that are needed for people to move from one place to the other.
All right. We thank you so much for your time and your insights, Professor Kaitano Dube, Professor in Tourism and Integrated Communication from the Vaal University of Technology, just speaking to us about air connectivity, particularly in Africa, not only the expense, but the lack of investment and policy enactment, as he says, with regards to how we modernize it. This as the G20 is meeting here in South Africa, and as you can imagine, lots of people flying in from across the world. And how easy is it? How cost effective is it to make those meetings back and forth? Brings the time to 3 minutes to 10 now. Miss Shayla Ntukumana is connecting with us on the air about what's coming up on African Diaries.
Madam, how often do you use your kitchen products? This is your olive oil, your avocado oil for your skin. How often do you do that?
I do when I either have an emergency or I just have that inspiration.
So it's not a regular thing, per se?
Nah, it just depends. If I find something that works for me, I use it.
Okay.
But I'm very bad at having a skin routine that is just like, I only literally face wash, Dove soap wash.
That's it.
Then tissue oil. I'm good to go.
Tsepiso, it's you flexing on us. We hear
No,
you.
I'm not.
We heard exactly what you're saying.
Sure.
No, we got it. We got it.
Like, I'm so easy like that. And that's why I'm saying it's bird. It's bird.
It's bird. So today we kickstart off by looking at DIY beauty routines, and this coming from your kitchen, whether it's eating the products, because I believe in eating them. Like, I'm not about to microwave avocados and then paste it on my I don't have the energy for that, but I can eat an avocado,
That's
I can eat the carrot, I can eat the tomato. So we're going to be starting off there, just looking at how we can beautify our skin through the food we consume. And then in the second hour of the show, colon cleanse, Tsepiso.
Why you gotta say my name like that? Like it's congruent with. Why?
I was about to share my experience, but clearly there's something you want to tell me.
No, but like we are not friends, we're not cousins. I'd like to try it. I'd like to visit the spot, but I don't have ownership.
Ma'am.
So you did it, and how was it?
I had to rethink my life in that moment.
My cousin said so because I sent her first. She was the recon mission. I said, go and come back and report to the nations. I said, hi, cuz, I don't know if I'm going to do it again.
I would say see it to finish. See it to finish so that you can see
how
the
many
benefits.
sessions.
So we were told that 3 sessions will be the most lucrative for the flush out. However, the first one, you know when you see your life flashing before your eyes?
Is it the pain or the discomfort?
Ma'am, it's the entire process. You would think that it's just the primary process. You know, the setup is what I'd call it. No, it's during the massage of the stomach. Then your stomach is fighting with the gas. Ma'am. It was a lot happening. All I'm saying is that there are benefits that one can.
I totally have been wanting to. In fact, now that you've reminded me, and come see about me before the end of November.
Before the end of November,
I would have completed the 3 sessions. How soon can you do back to back?
Oh, so she said it doesn't matter. So you can literally have them daily. However, there was a warning against your tummy lining, right? Because that is also being flushed away. And so I would take
within
like
a
2 to
week?
3, 2 to 3 days after the first session, 2 to 3 days after your second session, and you should be good. And then you glisten in the twilight. Apparently, you can avoid diseases that are not hereditary through the cleansing of your colon. So we discussed that in the second hour.
No, and I hope that you come up with a good place. Well, you'll tell me.
I know, we'll talk about. No, what will happen is that
advertise.
In December we will just be sparkling so bad, people will know that something's different.
We'll be limited. Taylor Dukwera, thank you very much. Up next is African Diaries.
Conversations that touch the heart and inspire change. Here on